Welcome to the Pacific Ocean. We're about 1 hour's drive away from Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. Fishermen are already out to make their daily catch. The sky looks beautiful, and today I want to talk about rocks. So, firstly, sandstone. Sedimentary rocks are formed as sediment, small parts of rock, are forced together under the immense weight of the rock above them. Now this is a wall of sediment. The sand builds up over time until eventually it's built up so much it's very, very high like this. And what we can see in front of us are the layers of that sand. Over time, how they've built up and layered upon each other. Almost like a cake. But this cake has taken many, many years to build. Eventually, the weight of those things will become stronger and stronger and stronger until the force pushes the sand together to make a rock. And that rock will become sandstone. This is a type of sedimentary rock. Shells. Lots and lots and lots of them. Shells aren't new. Shells are not a new form of life. Animals with shells have lived in the ocean for millions and millions and millions of years. In fact, the Pacific Ocean behind me, there have been animals with shells living in it for more than 500 million years. Shells like these look really interesting, but we're not interested in the way they look on the outside right now. We're interested in the way they look on the inside. A shell like this is made of a mixture of two things, calcium and carbon. It's a very interesting mixture because as it breaks down, it can change and become something else, something new. We have an enormous amount of shells here, and I want you to consider this in the same way you consider the sand. This can be sediment just like the sand can. It needs to be broken down a little bit more, but one day these shells, this sediment, once broken down and pressurized and squashed, will become something else entirely. One day, all of those shells will become a rock, a sedimentary rock, and a sedimentary rock called limestone. This is a process that's been happening for millions and millions of years. As sea creatures die off, the shells that they've made fall to the bottom of the ocean. And over millions of years, those shells build up and up and up and up. They're broken down by the water into smaller and smaller parts until they find themselves part of the Earth's crust. And one example of that rock is right in front of me now. So this is called limestone. Limestone is made from all of those bits of shells that break down over time. What I think is really cool about limestone is it looks so different from a shell. Those shells have been crushed and squashed until they've made this limestone. Limestone's quite soft, and so you can see that most of the edges of this limestone, they're very rounded. They're not very sharp and angular. That's because as the water from the ocean comes every day with the tide back over this area, it breaks off parts of the limestone and it creates more sediment, which eventually will turn into sand, which will eventually become sandstone, just like the sandstone that we looked at, or that was starting to form over here. This limestone is very interesting for another reason, because we know that the layers of the Earth's crust should be flat. As all of the sediment builds down and falls down, because of gravity, the layers should be flat. But look at the layers here. They're in lots of different shapes and patterns, and especially just behind me, you can see that they're coming up out of the ground at an angle. So this is the Earth's crust right there, and it's forcing itself up out of the ground at an angle. What that shows us is more evidence for tectonic activity, tectonic plates. It shows us that the crust is moving, and sometimes the crust can be forced to move against another part of the crust at an angle. It can be forced upright, and that's what we see here. Now, while I'm here on the beach, I have noticed some other rocks. This is a piece of granite stone, and it's not a sedimentary rock, it's an igneous rock. Granite forms from the mantle, and occasionally the mantle forces its way into the crust. It does this very slowly, and therefore it cools down very slowly and becomes part of the crust very slowly. And because it cools down very slowly, the rock is made up of lots and lots and lots and lots of quite large crystals. As well as that, we also have this quite interesting piece of rock, which is also granite. It's also got big crystals, but it's got these strange lines running through the middle, almost like a sedimentary rock. The difference here is that this is granite, this is rock, this is mineral. It's made from something else. It's a different type of structure than a rock. It's a mineral. And so sometimes it's a little bit confusing when you see layers, but you have to be able to work out what each of the layers are to know that this is igneous. Now, we also have this really nice piece of rock here. It's almost a little bit shiny, like glass, and black. And this has been made from incredible amounts of pressure over a long period of time. Because it looks a little bit like glass, a little bit more shiny and more solid. We can't see any crystals. We can see lots of sand in it, but we can't see crystals. That's because the heat and pressure of the mantle has mixed all those crystals together. They've been melted. And as a result, they've made this really, really strong piece of metamorphic rock. Metamorphic rock.